When I was a kid, Avatar: The Last Airbender had just premiered its first few episodes. It took the school by force. Every dumb kid was swooshing and slashing the air like they were bending the elements. Some were just chucking rocks at people. I remember one day at recess, all the guys were gathered round, and we discussed which element we liked the best. Some kids said fire, others earth, and then there was me. I said that I liked water. Some little shit immediately singled me out and said, "Don't you know only girls are waterbenders?" That caught me off guard. It devastated me. I couldn't recall any guy waterbenders.
Water.
I felt embarrassed, and I slunk away. Yeah, in the end the kid was just wrong. We see a lot of male waterbenders later on. I guess the lesson here is that in that brief span of time before the gang got to the Northern Water Tribe, a bunch of dumb kids in rural Ohio thought that just girls could waterbend because our only reference was Katara. This has nothing to do with the rest of the video. I just didn't want to be another video essay that starts off saying The Last Airbender is absolute trash. The Last Airbender, the movie, the game, is an utterly fascinating film for me. It's one of those brilliant moments in Hollywood where absolutely nothing works.
That's a penis!
It fails as an adaptation of one of the greatest shows to ever exist, and it fails as an introduction to anyone unfamiliar with said show. It fails at storytelling in general. Hell, it even fails in emulating how humans behave and speak.
Are really powerful benders in the Northern Water Tribe. My dad told me about it before he left. It's led by a princess because her father died. There are teachers.
How does that even happen? Who forgets how humans work? Oh, that's why. Complaining about this movie is one of the most done-to-death things on YouTube. For most late millennials and early zoomers, the cartoon was like a holy text, and this movie was the equivalent of sacrilege. Burn him at the stake, they said. Stone the Shyamalan. Make him pay for his sins.
And if they had just called him Aang once!
And look, I'm a major fan of Avatar. It's certainly the best Western animated kids show by a long mile.
Friendly mushroom! Mushy giant friend!
I understand the outrage, but now just so many years have passed, this whole experience is more funny to me than anything. The show exists, I'm glad it exists, and you can never replicate it, no matter how many times they try. I think I've genuinely got more entertainment from this movie being bad than I ever could have if it was just mediocre or even good. And now here I am, making a video trashing that movie in 2024. I'm a little late to the party on this one. I got a feeling that Avatar fans are gonna make fun of something else for the next 10 years. So before that takes over, I decided to be the last one out. Goodbye, Last Airbender. We got a new thing to make fun of. But before sending this movie off to the farm and never talking about it again, I want to explore just one question. What the hell was anyone thinking? If there is something that has baffled people for over a decade, it is the question, why M. Night Shyamalan? Why was he the director chosen for this project? And to answer that, we have to first ask another question. Where was M. Night Shyamalan? In his career, the answer is, he wasn't doing great. Some directors are consistently good, some are consistently bad, but Shyamalan is consistent in not being consistent. You might as well roll the dice on his quality. Some of his films are alright, and then there's those times that he just rolls a crit fail. The rebounding explosion makes a critical bomb. M. Night Shyamalan works best with small-scale thrillers or horror concepts. Doesn't mean they'll always be good.
What? No!
But it's what he's best at. So why? Why did he take on a major blockbuster? Two reasons. One, to fit in, and two, to bring back his career from the verge of death. Shyamalan's catalog is like a roller coaster. A lot more ups than downs. Shyamalan always has this ability of releasing one decent movie right before everyone has given up on him. He really has that knack for occasionally hitting a home run, so everyone just keeps him around, like Stanton. So he's never really done actual blockbusters, except for those 2 times. And even he admits now, he wasn't cut out for it. He says now, after everyone's clowned on it. Looking at the interviews, he used every cope in the book.
You know, I always had a European sensibility to my movies, so the pacing is always a little bit off for them, you know, and it feels a little stilted, and they need more electricity and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the way I think of things, because, you know, Hitchcock and Kurosawa and Stanley Kubrick, these are like my teachers.
And I'm the Avatar. I ran away, but I'm back now.
Who do you think you are, M. Night? Kojima? Which, look, it makes sense that nobody wants to take the project they worked on and throw it under the bus, except if it's Madam Web. But now that he's been removed from it, and he's been humbled, went back to mid-size movie land where he belongs, he realizes that, yeah, this movie's trash. At the same time, though, why did he have to learn this lesson with Avatar?
Why is your hair white, young lady? You look very odd.
It's because of his kids. That's it. They were watching it in the room one day, and M. Night waltzed up and started watching it with them. It was all over from there. Imagine just liking a show, and your dad walks in on you and decides to make his own version of it. What a nightmare. By all accounts, Shyamalan was the one who came up with the idea of an Avatar movie. Paramount were kind of just like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this. And Shyamalan really overpromised. He wanted to do a 3-movie trilogy that he would write and direct all by himself. He wanted to ride that Avatar IP all the way back to the top. And oh man, did he not do that at all. In hindsight, betting it all on M. Night Shyamalan was the first mistake. The second, more infamous reason, one that everyone has forever talked about, is the casting. Why do the waterbenders look like that? Why do the firebenders look like that? Why do the earthbenders look like that? Well, the Earth Kingdom is literally based off China, so that makes sense. Why did they do this? Was it malicious? Was it racist? And, no. Best that I could find. Shyamalan kinda just didn't think about it. You see, the ethnicities of the 4 nations were determined by whoever he decided to work with. That was it. The reason Aang was white was because Noah Ringer was a short 12-year-old black belt in Taekwondo. He had literally no acting experience, but he sure could do that. Shyamalan wanted to cast Nicola Peltz as Katara, saying she was a talented young actress who he envisioned in the role. If you watch my Transformers 4 video, you could kind of tell that was absolute bullshit.
100 years ago, all was right with our world. Prosperity and peace filled our days. Fire Lord's son. You took him from our village.
But how did she work in 2 major Hollywood films without any experience? Allegedly, Peltz was only hired because of her billionaire father, Nelson Peltz. Allegedly, a producer owed her dad a favor. Like I said, allegedly. But considering how bad she is and how Hollywood works, I 100% could see this being true. Because of that, well, Sokka had to be the same ethnicity as Katara, and all the other waterbenders had to kind of resemble them too. We'll never get the true story, but there is always the possibility that this whole unfortunate whitewashing incident was never caused by actual racism, but just classic Hollywood nepotism. Yippee. It's funny how much one casting choice drastically affected the film. Like, originally, Zuko was supposed to be played by Jesse McCartney. Yes, that one. But he had a tour at the time or something and dropped out. So Shyamalan's next choice was Dev Patel. Oh my god, imagine this trash fire with Jesse McCartney. In regards to the Fire Nation's ethnicity, Shyamalan said this in a Gizmodo article from 2010. The Fire Nation was the most complicated. I kept switching who was playing Zuko. It was such a complicated and drawn-out thing about practical matters. But the first person I was considering casting for Zuko was Ecuadorian, so I started thinking that way. Then when that person couldn't do it, the next person who came in was much more Caucasian. And then we had to switch everything around. So here's my personal theory. Whoever was going to be Zuko was going to determine the nationality of the entire Fire Nation. Like, it sounds like here we almost got Ecuadorians conquering the world. But since Dev Patel got the role, well, in Shyamalan's mind, all the firebenders had to be Indian now. Not a single neuron was activated in that brain. But hey, I don't like being too negative. Before going down that path of just completely bashing this movie, I want to say what I actually like about The Last Airbender. The backgrounds. I like the backgrounds. Man, that says a lot about modern CGI if The Last Airbender movie still kind of holds up. And I like one specific background more than any of them. This background, the Fire Nation capital. Yeah, it doesn't resemble the show's capital in the slightest, but I really like the aesthetic. It's like a grandiose combination of multiple Southeast Asian styles. It doesn't fit at all as the capital of the Fire Nation. I just like the atmosphere. Okay, that's it. Oh, to be a fly on the wall when M. Night was writing this movie. What was the thought process? How can you get so invested in the show, approach Paramount with the idea, go through all this work, and then that's the script you write?
What if we found you teachers to teach you bending? Which element would...
The Last Airbender fails first and foremost because of its script. The greatest production and effects in the world can't save a movie from bad writing, unless you're the Star Wars prequels. But then again, those are actually funny.
Another happy landing.
The Last Airbender is very similar to the prequels. Dry, bland, expository dialogue, a screenplay that was probably a first draft, directing that didn't work well with the actors at all, and a film that was tonally strange and often bizarre. Yet still, the backgrounds were strangely good. Crazy how that happens. While the prequels have been redeemed by childhood nostalgia, the Clone Wars, and Battlefront 2 brainwashing,
well, of course I know him. He's me.
The Last Airbender did not have that luxury, nor should it.
It's time for you to stop doing this!
The Avatar would have to be an airbender. Are you an airbender, boy?
Like, no amount of time is gonna redeem this movie, nor future bad adaptations. Two bad things can exist at once. The only thing this film has is exposition. A house of exposition, built on a shaky bedrock of more exposition. There are no characters here, only Wikipedia articles that badly retell world building that may or may not pertain to the situation at hand.
As you know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
Get on with it.
Adapting a cartoon that just aired is already a dumb idea, and adapting an entire season of character growth and relationships into a 3-act structure is even worse. Yeah, here's my opinion. This movie didn't fail because it tried to condense a season of plot into a single movie. No, this movie uniquely failed because it didn't know how to do anything. It didn't know how to condense, it didn't know how to write, it especially didn't know how to pace itself, because it's essentially the first 3 episodes of the show, and then the Blue Spirit, and then the next half of the film is the climax at the Northern Water Tribe. So that's the first issue. I'd say Act 2 begins once they leave the Southern Air Temple. They get captured because this little dick was slinging rocks, and they're brought to the Fire Nation prison. You just know what M. Night was thinking. See, the show had an episode where the Earthbenders were imprisoned, and it's just like that. But you know, that prison was a metal barge in the middle of the ocean, the one place the prisoners couldn't earthbend. In the movie, it's a dirt pit. I can't think of a place more surrounded by Earth. And yet, the Earthbenders still do nothing.
Why are you acting this way? You are powerful and amazing people.
They're just too sad. Poor little guys. What's their excuse here? I don't know. They're just sitting there, so Aang can go up to them and say, "Hey, you guys know you can throw rocks, right?" And then they're like, "Oh, okay." Is that even fighting back? I don't know, maybe they should have given up. The movie is just chock full of these little tidbits from the show that are disconnected from their original purpose. Like, why does the Earthbending village have a waterbending scroll? Why didn't the Firebenders just burn all the stuff down? Did you guys want to lose the war? See, it's the scroll like in the show. You never see it again after the shot, though.
Avatar, Kyoshi, loved games.
I do too. I mean, I still do.
Yeah, when I think about Avatar Kyoshi, the first thing I think about is how much she loved games. Kill! Who knows, maybe having disconnected chunks of the show that play no relevance in the story was just part of Shyamalan's European artistic tastes. Maybe the Swedes absolutely love this scene. I don't know. Look, we don't need every plot point. We could have survived without the episode where Aang gets his fortune told, or the two tribes that hate each other. Actually, I take it back. I will defend the Great Divide until the day I die. I like that Aang just lied to these people about their foundational myth. After this montage, Aang gets captured and saved by the Blue Spirit, and then the rest of the movie is at the Northern Water Tribe. Yeah, so there's a pacing issue. So, in writing, there's the term called Chekhov's gun. Act 1, there's a gun on the wall. Seems pretty unimportant. Then in Act 3, the gun is used to shoot the bad guy. Setup, payoff, you get it. M. Night does the exact opposite of that. In Act 1, there's like 5 guns on the wall. The characters talk about why there are 5 guns on the wall, and then in Act 3, the main bad guy gets ran over by a truck. Will the exposition being said be relevant? Who knows?
But there are really powerful benders in the Northern Water Tribe. My dad told me about it before he left. It's led by a princess because her father died.
Why did Sokka need to mention that the Water Tribe is ruled by a princess because her father died? That information won't be relevant until they reach the north. Actually, I don't think that information is relevant ever. Like, she doesn't reflect on her dad dying once. It doesn't contribute to her character at all. She has no character. Why did he say this? They could have just shown her when they reached the north. Why'd you waste our time like that, M. Night? This exposition problem is what brings down the entire movie.
Aang airbended a sphere around them and ice formed, and he couldn't remember anything after that.
Instead of having characters that interact with motivations and attributes that the audience would care about, M. Night instead wrote lore-dumping machines that explain common sense things that people in the world should already know.
Well, it's not a place made up of things you can touch, but it exists nonetheless. It is filled with the most amazing forms of dazzling creatures that exist in the most exotic valleys, mountains, and forests.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
So much of this movie feels like a first draft by a writer who intentionally overwrit everything to compensate for having no deeper substance. A smokescreen. Yet it's a poor smokescreen, like you can see him sneaking away. Even if these characters weren't lore dumping to one another, I don't think the problem would ever be solved, because even regular dialogue just sounds strange and stilted. Why is it all so damn weird? Everyone talks in the most roundabout way possible, like Grandpa Simpson never getting to the point.
You said
I apologize. I should have explained further. If you failed the test, as all others did, you were free to leave. But as it turns out, you are the only one in the entire world who could pass this test.
Just say he's the Avatar, holy shit! What we end up with is this unholy trinity of wasting time. Dialogue that comes from a dimension that was generated by ChatGPT.
Fire Nation knew the Avatar would be born into the air nomads, so they exterminated all the air nomads.
While some actors probably weren't great, I can't blame them in the slightest. Okay, maybe a little. But you try to make these lines sound halfway decent.
Is there a spiritual place where I can meditate?
There is a very spiritual place. The city was built around this place.
All 3 of these factors manifest a film that is uniquely horrible. Well, not uniquely horrible. I did say earlier that it was like the prequels. But you know why the prequels were redeemed, while The Last Airbender never will be? Because behind all of its flaws, the setting and action of the prequels were cool as hell, and The Last Airbender is not. The Last Airbender actually took something that was already cool and made it worse. The Last Airbender's action is just woof. Bending in general just doesn't translate as well to live action. Like, yeah, there's some cool scenes in the Netflix adaptation. Like, imagine half of this stuff in real life. It looked goofy as hell. That said though, they still didn't even really try. 5 guys throw a rock. Whee! The biggest tragedy here are the firebenders. Why can't they make their own fire? Why force them to use another source? It just makes them so much less interesting. How did these guys consistently wage a war for 100 years if they could only do this? One of the reasons the firebenders were so threatening was that they could, you know, shoot fire from their hands. Might as well call them gunbenders. But if they have to carry the fire around themselves, well, now you can just defeat them by snuffing out whatever source they have. It's like a boss fight. Once you find out the exploit, it's all over. Fun fact, with enough dirt, you can suffocate a fire. Just douse the flames and jump the guards, dummies.
My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?
For some reason, M. Night thought producing fire should be this special skill set that only a few firebenders could do.
He's making fire out of nothing.
It'd make it more impressive, I guess. Impressive to who? The fictional firebenders that don't exist? The general audience? Because the general audience already saw 3 seasons of this being the norm. Imagine if the Michael Bay movies made it that the Transformers could never transform on a whim, and it was a big deal when Optimus Prime transformed or something. Who would be impressed with that? They should just do that on default. You wanted that moment with Iroh though, so I hope it was worth it. It's like M. Night took every opportunity to make this world actively less interesting. Like, the Waterbenders aren't this Arctic civilization based on the Inuits anymore. They're like colder Russia. Everyone's dressed like Russians. Remember how the Northern Air Temple was resettled by Earth Kingdom refugees who turned it into a new home? Yeah, there's this one guy in it now. He's just hanging out. The worst change of all, though, is what the movie does with the idea of the Avatar. You see, this movie does have a central theme. It's not a good theme, but it exists. See, the lesson to take away is that the Avatar cannot hurt others. I guess.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
Like, this little display is just to show how powerful the ocean is. Not to actually hurt anyone. He's not supposed to do that. It's just to spook the Fire Nation into running away. When was that ever established? You see, throughout the film, the Avatar is supposed to be a symbol of hope. Yeah. In the show, the Avatar is a symbol of hope because the Avatar is the most powerful bender in the world. Hope in the Avatar is kind of like hope that an asteroid will hit your enemy's house. Everyone has hope that the Avatar will obliterate the Fire Lord and stop the Fire Nation from waging their war. You know, because he's so powerful. In the movie, the Avatar's main goal is now just to inspire people.
Why are you acting this way? You are powerful and amazing people. You don't need to live like this.
Ugh, just gotta believe in themselves. Lift their spirits enough to not want to be in a prison camp.
And maybe we can stop in the villages on the way, start a change in the war in these small villages.
Ironically, the live-action message is far more in line with the children's show than the actual children's show. Bringing balance means harming and even killing people, bringing the world out of balance. And that dilemma was the central focus at the end of the series.
I guess I don't have a choice, Momo. I have to kill the Fire Lord.
I mean, he still didn't do it because, like, lion turtle magic or whatever, but that's not the point. In the movie, the lesson Aang has to learn is that the Avatar is a pacifist. He can't actually hurt people.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
He's a Captain Planet figure that comes in and inspires change by doing fancy bending tricks. Turns out the 100 Years' War wasn't actually a stalemate at all. The Earthbenders just weren't really feeling it. What a great lesson. These people were letting themselves be oppressed by an invading power because they just didn't try hard enough. Thanks, M. Night.
I'm going to do nothing.
So instead of turning into this fish kaiju and wiping out the Fire Nation Navy by force, Aang just does this.
Use the ocean. Show them the power of water.
Did M. Night accidentally mix up Airbender pacifism as Avatar pacifism? I think he did.
Not meant to hurt others.
Is that really the central theme you'll want to stick with? Cause you're just shackling yourself for no reason. What was your plan for the next 2 movies, M. Night? For him not to fight anybody? Let's not pretend there were plans here. We were flying by the seat of our clown pants in this situation. Why does Aang always look so scared? You know this isn't a horror movie, right? considering he literally never acted before this. I think Noah Ringer was alright.
He's a flying lemur bat. We keep them as pets.
He's good at physical acting and action, even if the choreography is often strange and dumb. Though half his moves are just M. Night saying, swing that stick around and look cool. Why they thought he would be a good lead for a 3-movie blockbuster series, I will never know. I really think M. Night thought he was gonna get another Haley Joel Osment, discover new talent, and it blew up in everyone's face. More than anyone, Noah himself. He apparently was a fan of the original show, and was elated to be a part of it. Then the movie came out. How dare he be hired as a first-time child actor? At the end of the day, it was his face, more than anything, that became cemented with one of the worst films of all time. His face will be on every thumbnail for all of eternity. Noah Ringer quit acting soon after, only appearing in one other movie, Cowboys vs. Aliens.
And do good things, you go get our people back.
Man, he never had a chance. He vanished from the public spotlight so hard that it's impossible to find any recent pictures of him.
You're lying!
I don't blame him. Imagine if the world only remembered you from that time when you were 12. It's not like you had a billionaire family to fall back on. Speaking of which, I'm lumping these two together because in this movie, they're really not too different. They're both cardboard husks that follow Aang around, also with a terrified look on their face. Like I said before, Nicola Peltz is the worst actor in the film. It doesn't help that she's also the narrator for the whole thing.
My brother and the princess became friends right away. My brother and I live in the Southern Water Tribe, which was once a big city. Aang airbended a sphere around them and ice formed, and he couldn't remember anything after that.
There is nothing here that even resembles Katara. No motherly role, no moral grandstanding even. If you had never watched the show, you would have thought Katara and Sokka were just the same character.
So, are you the Avatar, Aang?
Sokka's there too. They try on occasion to do comedic bits with him, but they're so far and few between, it catches you off guard. Like, so much of the tone in this movie is ominous. It's got kinda creepy music most of the time. Everyone's sorta terrified, like a monster's gonna jump out and drag Aang away or something. But then they'll throw in some random joke that doesn't mesh at all.
He was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree. It really hurt.
Say what you will about the Netflix version, but that guy is far more like Sokka. Damn girl, cover that up, you're in public. Funnily enough, the romance subplot with Yue isn't that much worse. Mainly because I just didn't care about that romance in the 2 episodes it was in. Yue was never great in the show. Yeah, I said it. Team Suki for life. She wasn't bad. She was just there. You know?
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you.
And because of that, live-action Yue is pretty close to how she was in the show. Bland. Pretty uninteresting. But Sokka liked her, so we liked her too. Look, her sacrifice was always sad, but let's not pretend her turning into a space rock changed her personality much. One funny thing I noticed is that in their final scene together, Sokka doesn't even maintain eye contact at all. He's just staring at her forehead the whole time. These two are the best part of the movie. It's actually funny how the quality goes up whenever it's their scenes. Like a glimpse at a film that wasn't a 4 out of 10 on IMDb. Maybe something like a 6 out of 10. There's a relationship here. You can at least infer one is supposed to be a rage-filled prince, and the other is his wise uncle. There are some elements of the character actually here. Not a ton, but it's something. I think they might actually have conversations a few times that aren't simply exposition.
Tell me what you know about the prince.
He did something wrong.
He spoke out of turn to a general in defense of some of his friends.
Oh wait, never mind. The pain of banishment is conveyed pretty well from Dev Patel. Iroh very clearly cares for Zuko. He doesn't resemble the show Iroh in the slightest, but he does look like someone who used to lead armies. I could see his character working if there had ever been sequels. And that isn't something that I'd say for the main trio at all. There's one character who certainly isn't in the sequels. You know, 'cause he drowns. Zhao was the threatening, arrogant, and confident leader of the Fire Nation Navy. He had no care for the spiritual world and truly was an embodiment of the Fire Nation's hunger for conquest.
They will call me Zhao the Conqueror, Zhao the Moon Slayer, Zhao the Invincible!
He killed the f***ing moon, and in the end, he was defeated, both by the spirits and his own pride. In the movie, he's played by the pizza guy from Spider-Man 2.
In 8 minutes, I am defaulting on Joe's 29-minute guarantee. You know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
Get on with it.
He gets killed by random waterbenders instead of the ocean spirit. The main bad guy kills a spirit, defies them openly, and then he gets killed by random extras. Bold storytelling. The problem with casting Asif Manvi is that he is very clearly a comedic actor. A comedic actor with very little physical presence. He's doing the best he can with these lines, but because he's an exposition machine, he more comes off like a nerd that annoys the Fire Lord.
As you know, the Fire Lord has banished his son, the Prince, and renounced his love of him and will not let him return to the throne unless...
Get on with it.
It took 2 seasons of build-up before we ever saw the Fire Lord's face, an ominous presence that everyone feared.
You will learn respect, and suffering will be your teacher.
And here's how he's introduced in the movie.
As you know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
Get on with it.
He's just a guy. Walks around his palace all day. He doesn't even seem that invested in the war, more so annoyed, if anything. This was the one who burned his own son's face? This is the guy who wants to conquer the world? Every change M. Night makes, man, it's just...
You think my son is this person the soldiers are calling the Blue Spirit?
Yes.
Apparently, there was actually a scene of him being threatening, and they just cut it out of the movie. Why do you keep making every wrong decision?
I do, Father.
They thought they were gonna get a sequel. The Last Airbender is a film where nothing went right. And really, it wasn't just because it had no reason existing in the first place. Even then, if we had to make that movie, M. Night had no place taking on such a task. He clearly wasn't cut out for it. My voice is actually giving out. And even then, there's still so much I want to talk about. Like how the choreography sucks. How the extras don't know where to go. The slow motion is used because they weren't confident in that action. And you know, now that I think about it, I didn't even mention how they just pronounce all their names wrong.
The Avatar.
The monks named me Aang.
Sokka. Don't.
Are you the Avatar, Aang?
It was this long into the video, and I just mentioned it. That has to be a Last Airbender review record. M. Night watched the show. It's not like he didn't know their names or anything. He intentionally changed the pronunciation. He says it was to make the names more Asian and accurate. But no, that's not even the correct way. Half the time in these interviews, I swear M. Night just sort of lies. Like he makes up reasons, because the real reason is too stupid to admit. I cannot imagine he never envisioned anyone else except Nicola Peltz as Katara. I think the main reason he changed the pronunciation was to make this series his own thing. Saying the right pronunciations would just make people think of the show. And this isn't the show. This is a serious live-action epic created by M. Night Shyamalan. One that was going to bring his career right to the top. Even if he did enjoy the series watching it with his kids, I think he mainly enjoyed it by using it as a vessel for his career. Who's to say? This is a funny YouTube video. I don't know, is a live-action Avatar adaptation just a folly? An attempt at capitalizing on something that already has been done perfectly? Yes it is. What made people love the show was the fact that it was animated. Every comedic beat, every emotional moment, every bit of action. Even if you did an exact recreation of the story in live action, it just wouldn't translate the same. Some things are just lightning in a bottle. I guess because people are going to ask my opinion, I did see the Netflix series, at least the first couple of episodes. And it isn't the worst. at least compared to The Last Airbender. But it's still not good. After a bit, you just think, what's the point? Why watch something that slightly changes and muddles the story of the original? What am I getting rewatching a story I've already seen done better in animation? And the answer to that was nothing. I was getting nothing out of it. These two only exist to capitalize on a show that already told its story. If there was going to be a live-action Avatar show that was darker than the original, then it should have just been set in an entirely different story and time. Make up a new Avatar, have a more mature original story, and nobody would compare it to the cartoon. But that requires, you know, an original story, which is why they didn't do it. Sometimes bad adaptations make us enjoy the things they're trying to adapt even more. There's now an example of how to do the story absolutely wrong. And it makes you realize that you're kinda lucky for getting the original in the first place. I think I said the same lesson in the Pacific Rim video, but it's a lesson that pops up more often than you'd think. So thank you, M. Night Shyamalan, for making something so horrendous it made us appreciate the show even more. Please never make a major blockbuster again.